Chapter 9. Turning the Tables. The days that followed were a masterclass in feigned submission. I became a ghost in the gilded cage, my spirit seemingly extinguished by the fire of Ethan's rage. I was pliant, quiet, and obedient. When he spoke, I listened. When he touched me, I trembled, a carefully calibrated mix of fear and unwilling response that fed his need for control. I let him believe he had burned the defiance out of me on that cold marble table. But beneath the placid surface, my mind was a forge. The pain and humiliation of that day hadn't broken me. They had tempered me. Every aching muscle, every phantom echo of his brutal possession was a reminder. A pawn in their game is always the first piece sacrificed. Ile had used me. Ethan had claimed me. Both had underestimated me. They saw a beautiful object to be fought over, a prize to be won. They never once thought the prize might have its own agenda. It was time to stop playing their game. It was time to become the board itself. My old life as Ariel had taught me one fundamental truth. Control is everything. I had controlled every encounter, every conversation, every outcome. I had lost that control completely, but the skills remained. Now, I had to apply them on a scale I had never imagined. My goal was no longer just escape. Escape was for survivors. My goal was power. Power was for queens. My weapons were not guns or money, but information. I began to assemble my arsenal in the quiet moments of my captivity. I had seen the wound in Ethan's soul, the one carved by a woman named Victoria. Knew his obsession with loyalty was not a tactic, but a deep, searing trauma. His paranoia was his armor, but it was also a gaping flaw. A paranoid man can be led by his own fears. And I knew Leo. I knew his arrogant charm, his belief that everyone was a tool waiting to be used. He would be furious that Ethan had intercepted me, but his pride wouldn't let him accept defeat. He would still be watching, waiting for his asset to become available again. He would think me a damsel in distress, waiting for his rescue. I would use that vanity against him. The problem remained contact. The crushed burner phone was a stark monument to my failure. Than's surveillance was absolute now. Marcus's shadow was a constant presence. Any direct attempt to communicate with the outside world would be instantly discovered, so I wouldn't attempt it. I would make my enemy my messenger. My opportunity came 4 nights later. Ethan was in his study, a tumbler of whiskey in hand, staring into the glowing abyss of his market data feeds. He was on edge. My betrayal had sharpened his paranoia to a razor's point. He was hunting for threats, seeing shadows in every corner. He was a predator, hungry and restless. I entered the study wearing nothing but one of his black silk shirts, the hem barely skimming my thighs. I had learned that my body was a weapon he couldn't resist, and tonight I would wield it with a strategist's precision. I came up behind him, sliding my arms around his chest, resting my cheek against the hard muscle of his back. I felt him tense for a moment, then relax into my touch. "You're thinking so loudly," I whispered, my voice a soft purr. "The whole room is vibrating with it." He grunted, taking a sip of his whiskey. "There are movements in the market I don't like." My heart gave a single hard thump. This was it. I pressed myself closer, tracing the lines of his chest with my fingertips. "Is that bad?" I asked, my voice a perfect imitation of a naive, concerned lover. I was playing the part he had assigned me, the beautiful creature who existed only within the walls of his life, with no understanding of the world outside. "It's a strategic move," he said, his voice a low growl. "It gives him leverage over our South American distribution channels. It's a nuisance." I let a thoughtful silence hang in the air for a moment. Then, as if a half-forgotten memory had just surfaced, I spoke. "Nico," I murmured against his skin. "That sounds familiar. When I was with Leo, he met with some men. They were speaking German. I didn't understand much, but I heard them say Omnicorp and another name. Falke." I feigned a slight shiver. They seemed intense. I remember Leo laughing about a cuckoo in the nest. I felt the change in him immediately. His entire body went rigid beneath my hands. The slow, steady rhythm of his breathing stopped. Falk, German for falcon. It was a name I plucked from a random financial article I'd glimpsed on one of Ethan's discarded tablets weeks ago. It had no connection to Leo or Omnicorp that I knew of. It was a phantom, a piece of bait, expertly grasped and attached to a very real hook. He turned slowly in his chair to face me, his eyes boring into mine. The whiskey was forgotten, his focus was absolute. Falk AG, he asked, his voice levelly soft. Are you sure? I widened my eyes, letting a flicker of fear show. I think so. Why did I say something wrong? I pulled the shirt tighter around myself, a damsel terrified of having displeased her lord. He stared at me for a long, silent moment, his mind racing. I could almost see the connections being forged behind his eyes. Leo Omnicorp, a secret German partner. A cuckoo in the nest. A hostile, hidden takeover. I had just handed his paranoia a full-course meal, and it was devouring every bite. He believed me. He believed me because my information was delivered in the guise of loyal, fearful submission. No, he finally said, his voice flat. He stood up, setting his glass down with a decisive click. You did very well. He walked out of the study and I heard his voice from the living area, sharp and commanding. Marcus, get me everything we have on a German firm called Falk A. I want to know who they are, what they own, and everyone Leo Sterling has spoken to in the last 6 months with a German accent. Tear it all apart. I remained in the study, a slow, triumphant smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. I had done it. I had turned the board. I hadn't needed a phone. Ethan, in his paranoid fury, would now pour millions of dollars and countless man-hours into chasing a ghost I had created. His spies, his analysts, his entire intelligence network would be focused on Falk 8 and Leo Sterling, whose own spies were undoubtedly watching Ethan's every move, would see this sudden, inexplicable obsession. He would see Ethan chasing a company he had no connection to and would wonder why. He would see it as a signal, a feint, a cryptic message from the asset he thought he had lost. I had used Ethan's own formidable power as my personal courier service. I was no longer just surviving, I was orchestrating. From the silent, beautiful prison of my cage, I had just moved the first piece in a new game. My game. And the two kings who thought they controlled the board had no idea they were now my pawns.